The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, every eye locked on the young faces sitting in the defendant's chair. They weren't hardened criminals with scars and tattoos, but children. Kids who should have been in school, laughing with friends, or playing video games. Instead, they were here, shackled, staring blankly at the floor, accused of crimes so monstrous that even seasoned investigators struggled to describe them without trembling. The air was thick with disbelief. How could children commit such acts? How could innocence twist into something so dark, so cruel? The cameras were rolling, journalists whispering into microphones, and the world outside was already buzzing, waiting to see justice unfold. Every viewer wanted answers, but more than that, they wanted to see the truth with their own eyes. Parents clutched their children tighter at home, wondering how these kids, once someone's babies, could become killers. The whispers in the room grew louder each time the accused glanced up, their cold expressions sending chills down spines. Some even smirked, as if enjoying the attention, and that only made the silence heavier. When the judge finally entered, the room fell completely still. His face was stern, his eyes sharp, scanning the courtroom before landing on the accused. He knew the world was watching, but for him, this wasn't about headlines. It was about justice, about making sure these kids understood the weight of what they had done. The families of the victims sat trembling just a few feet away, tears rolling down their faces, waiting for the words that could finally bring them peace. The trial was about to begin, and it wasn't going to be ordinary. It was going to be explosive, heartbreaking, and unforgettable. Would the judge go easy on them because of their age? Or would he unleash the full force of the law, crushing them with a sentence that would echo for the rest of their lives? This was not just another courtroom hearing. This was the day the world would see if justice truly had limits. The trial began with a silence so heavy, it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. The prosecutor rose, his voice steady but burning with anger as he laid out the facts. He described the crime in detail, sparing no one from the horror of what these kids had done. Each word was a dagger, piercing the room, making some people shake their heads in disbelief while others wiped away tears. Mothers in the gallery clutched photographs of their lost children. Fathers clenched their fists so tightly their knuckles turned white. Across the courtroom, the two accused sat unmoved. One leaned back casually, tapping his fingers on the desk as though bored. The other smirked when the prosecutor mentioned the victim's last moments, earning a gasp from the audience. It was a look that said, "I don't care." That coldness cut deeper than the crime itself. The defense attorney stood next, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. He spoke of their age, their troubled upbringing, and how society had failed them. He begged the court to see them not as monsters, but as children who had lost their way. His words, however, rang hollow. Every time he called them kids, the victims' families erupted in whispers of anger. To them, these weren't just kids. They were killers who had destroyed lives. Then came the witnesses. A teacher, voice trembling, recalled how one of the accused had once been bright and cheerful, but over the years had grown cold and violent. A neighbor described hearing screams the night of the crime, sounds that still haunted her sleep. And finally, the victim's parents stepped forward. Their voices cracked with grief as they spoke directly to the killers, telling them how their actions had ripped their families apart forever. The courtroom shook with emotion. Some cried openly, others shouted in outrage, and the judge had to slam his gavel to restore order. But the most chilling part was the reaction of the accused. They didn't flinch. They didn't look sorry. One even rolled his eyes as a mother sobbed in front of him. That single gesture sent a ripple of fury through the courtroom. The judge's face tightened. He had seen enough. His voice cut through the chaos, deep and commanding, as he told the court to prepare for his ruling. The world leaned in closer, waiting to hear if justice would finally crush the arrogance sitting at that defendant's table. The judge leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly on the bench, eyes locked on the two accused. The room went silent again, but this silence was different, tense, sharp, waiting to snap. He began by addressing the lawyers, his voice low but heavy with authority. I have listened carefully to both sides. I have heard the arguments of the prosecution and the defense. But what I cannot ignore is the conduct of these defendants right here in front of me. His gaze shifted toward the kids, and for the first time, even they seemed to sit a little straighter. The prosecutor rose again, pointing at the accused. Your Honor, these are not children who made a mistake. These are killers who planned their crime, carried it out without hesitation, and now sit before you mocking this very court. His voice rose, trembling with fury. They laugh while mothers cry. They smirk while fathers mourn. They show no remorse. If this courtroom is to stand for justice, it cannot show mercy where none is deserved. The defense attorney shot up, desperate. Your Honor, they are only teenagers. Their brains are not fully developed. Yes, the crime was horrific, but are we as a society prepared to give up on them completely? To throw away their futures? The judge turned slowly toward him. Their futures. His voice was cold. Tell that to the victims who have no future. Tell that to the families who will never see their children again. The lawyer faltered, his words dying in his throat. One of the accused suddenly muttered under his breath, loud enough to be heard. This is a joke! The courtroom erupted with gasps, and the judge's gavel slammed down like thunder. He glared at the boy, his voice booming. Stand up! The boy rose reluctantly, a defiant grin on his face. The judge's words cut like a blade. You think this is a game? You think life and death are a joke? You sit there smirking as if you are untouchable. But let me make something very clear. You are not. His voice echoed through the chamber, every word striking harder than the last. The second accused tried to look away, but the judge called him out too. And you, he said sharply, do not hide from me. You wanted the world's attention. You have it now. Look at the pain in this courtroom. Look at the mothers who will never hold their children again. That is what you did. The boys shifted uncomfortably for the first time, their arrogance cracking under the weight of the judge's words. The families watched, tears streaming, as the balance of power finally shifted. The judge's voice grew even stronger. This court will not allow your mockery. You are about to face the full consequences of your actions. The entire courtroom leaned forward. The moment of judgment was coming, and no smirk could save them now. The judge gave a solemn nod, and the bailiff guided the first grieving parent to the stand. A mother stepped forward, clutching a framed photograph of her daughter. Her hands trembled, her face pale, but her eyes burned with a strength that came only from unbearable loss. She looked directly at the accused, her voice breaking as she spoke. Do you see this picture? This was my baby. She was 14 years old. She wanted to be a doctor. She wanted to save lives. But you took her from me. You laughed while she begged for her life. And now, every night, I wake up screaming because I can still hear her voice in my dreams. The courtroom was hushed, some wiping away tears, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The accused boy slouched in his chair, trying to look unaffected, but his smirk faltered when the mother raised her voice. You may think this is a game. You may think you're tough. But you're nothing. You're cowards who preyed on the innocent. And I pray that every single day you spend behind bars, you remember the face of the girl whose life you stole. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room as she stepped back, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then a father came forward. His hands were clenched tight, his jaw set with fury. He pointed straight at the accused. Look at me, he barked, his voice echoing through the chamber. Reluctantly, the boys looked up. You took my son's life, and for what? For fun? For some twisted thrill? Do you know what it's like to bury your own child? To stand over a coffin that should never have existed? His voice cracked, his rage breaking into grief. I will never forgive you. Never. The audience erupted in quiet sobs and muffled cries. Even the reporters lowered their cameras, unable to look directly at the raw pain spilling into the courtroom. One of the accused tried to look away, but the father shouted, No, don't look at the floor now. You looked my son in the eye before you killed him. So look at me now while I tell you this. Justice is coming, and it's coming today. The judge let the silence linger, heavy and suffocating. The killers sat stiffly, their bravado slipping away piece by piece. The families had spoken, and their words were sharper than any sentence. Now, all that remained was the final blow, the judge's ruling. The judge rose slowly from his seat, the sound of his chair scraping against the floor echoing through the courtroom like a warning. Everyone went still. His eyes swept across the room, over the weeping families, the restless audience, the nervous lawyers, before settling on the two boys who had shown so little emotion through it all. His voice came low at first, deliberate, every word cutting through the silence. I have seen many cases in my career. I have sentenced dangerous men, ruthless killers, people who thought they were above the law. But never, never have I seen children commit such cruelty and show such defiance in this court. The accused shifted, one trying to keep his smirk, the other biting his lip nervously. The judge slammed his gavel once, the sound cracking like thunder. Wipe that grin off your face. You are not untouchable. You are not clever. You are murderers. Gasps filled the room, and one mother sobbed loudly, clutching her chest. The judge continued, his voice rising, filled with fury and sorrow. You took innocent lives, and you sit here mocking the pain you caused. You laugh at mothers who will never hug their children again. You roll your eyes at fathers who buried their sons. That ends today. Because today, this court will take away the very thing you took from others. Your freedom. The boys glanced at each other, their arrogance cracking. The one who had smirked now looked pale, his jaw tightening. The other shook his head slightly, whispering under his breath, No, no, no. The judge leaned forward, his final words sharp as steel. You will spend the rest of your natural lives behind bars. There will be no parole, no second chances, no escape. Every morning when you wake up in a cell, you will remember the screams, the faces, and the lives you destroyed. This court sentences you to life imprisonment. The gavel slammed down hard. The sound seemed to shake the walls. The families erupted. Some cried tears of relief. Others shouted, Justice! Reporters rushed to capture every reaction. One of the accused buried his face in his hands, trembling for the first time. The other cursed under his breath, slamming his fist on the table, his fake confidence finally shattered. The judge stood tall, unmoved. Take them away! As the guards dragged the killers out, the families embraced each other, broken but finally given the justice they had begged for. The courtroom had witnessed not just a trial, but a reckoning. The world had watched killer kids crushed, not by fists, but by the weight of justice.